Good evening, welcome. I'm John. I'm the event director and a bookseller at Literati bookstore in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. We're so pleased to welcome John U. Bacon in support of Let Them Lead, Unexpected Lessons in Leadership from America's Worst High School Hockey Team. The book is, of course, a bestseller at our store, a staff pick. It's just named NPR's Books We Love 2021 list, and I believe has been nominated for Malcolm Gladwell's book club as well, among other accolades. Just a reminder for you, a quick webinar overview for you, our attendees. The chat's closed, but you can keep that chat window open because I'll be sharing links to purchase Let Them Lead from Literati Bookstore. We have signed copies available. Oh, my virtual background's not letting me do this, but there we go. We have signed copies in store as well. You can see them behind John as well. Yeah, there you go. Live transcription is available to you if you need closed captioning. That's on your toolbar using the CC icon. And if you're watching us later on YouTube, there's always links to purchase books directly in the description below me as well. And as a reminder, you can shop for more books at literatibookstore.com to have shipped to your home anywhere in the United States. And if you live in Southeast Michigan or in the Ann Arbor area, of course, our doors are open to the public for in-store shopping. Most of all, I'll just make one last plug though, we do have signed copies too. Those are in the store. Most of all, we would just like to thank you for your attendance this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, or much later this evening, depending on where and when in the world you may be joining us. I'm going to start by doing a bit of an introduction of John and the book tonight, something I haven't gotten to do much in the virtual world, but used to do a lot when we did it in the store. So it's nice to return to it. So given Michigan football's recent and stunning success and John U. Bacon's indispensable dispatches about the program in recent years, it's difficult for me not to draw up a particularly striking analogy as a means to introducing his latest, Let Them Lead, a book that is very much not about Michigan football. In a recent entry to his ongoing diary about the state of Michigan football, Slate writer Ben Mathis Lilly interviewed a number of people who have been close to the program, or Jim Harbaugh himself, in an attempt to explain what was to many one of the most surprising seasons for the program, well, perhaps since 1997. Bacon was among them, but what stood out to me was a quote from former Stanford offensive lineman Ben Muth about Harbaugh. Quote, "He's almost such a cliche of a football coach. He seems kind of full of it at first. I think the longer you're around him, it's like, oh no, this is who he is. He comes in and he talks a big game about what he's going to do and what we're going to do as a team. Then he backs it up. He lives it. I don't think he's ever said something that he didn't really and truly believe." When John Bacon took over a moribund Huron High School hockey program coming off of an 0-22-3 record, he sent the team a letter. It read, "Congratulations, you have joined the state's hardest working high school hockey team. This is a first-class program." No doubt were I a player on that team, I might have read those opening lines of the letter and done a double take. Had this coach watched us play? Is this pablum? Does he believe this? "We will be guided," Bacon continues later in the letter, "by two rules. Work hard, support your teammates. That's it. Everything else flows from those." And I have to admit that after doing that double take, that line would have sold me. There are a lot of lessons in Let Them Lead, which builds and outlines tools for leaders of all kinds through John's recounting of his exhilarating spell as the head coach of the River Rats. But those two rules form its core. The thrust of Mathis Lilly's piece, and many cogent pieces about the 2021 Michigan football season that have come out in the wake of their first outright Big Ten championship in 18 years, strike me now as eerily familiar. The team has insisted that there really wasn't anything secret about how they succeeded either. It was as simple as what they themselves reported. They worked hard and they supported each other fiercely, win or lose. That was it. Everything else flowed from that. By which I mean to say, for the still unpersuaded, if you're somehow in need of a higher stakes test case that applies the takeaways of Let Them Lead, one just happened. Of course, I don't think any book about leadership can rival John's ability to seamlessly weave in his peerless talents at storytelling and reportage. But if you're For the uninitiated, you will discover that all on your own when you read Let Them Lead. So without further ado, John U. Bacon has written for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, and NPR, among others. He's authored 7 national bestsellers on sports, business, health, and history. Popular corporate speaker, executive coach, and leadership consultant, Bacon lives in Ann Arbor with his wife and son. Please welcome to your living rooms, John U. Bacon.
John Ganyard, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. I think we've done 5 or 6 together by now. Starting to add up. I think it was End Zone tipped it off. End Zone. We did Overtime, of course, together. We did
4th and Long. It started with 4th and Long in the basement of the store. Yeah,
that's right. When you guys were just getting started.
That's right.
4th and Long, End Zone, Overtime, the John Saunders book, Playing Hurt.
Yep.
Your store, Best of Bacon. We did that together. And of course, Halifax. We did a great job with that one at Rackham. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And now here we are, number 6. That happens fast, John. How about that? So anyway, appreciate all you guys showing up. I know everyone's busy, especially this time of year. So that's all good. And I'm screwing off my screen here a little bit. I am John Bacon, friend of John Ganyard's, friend of the stores, of course, named by Publishers Weekly, the #1 independent bookstore in America a couple of years ago. So that was pretty cool. So let's dive in. The book is called Let Them Lead, Unexpected Lessons in Leadership from America's Worst High School Hockey Team. And it's all true. And I was the head coach at Ann Arbor Huron High School, right here in town, of course, home of the River Rats. And not making that one up either. The team's record, as John said, was 0-22-3. And for you non-sports fans, the 0 is where the wins go. So they had not won a game. They hired yours truly, who was the worst player in school history. That is not false modesty. I can prove this empirically. I still hold the record, not bragging, just saying, for the most games in a Huron uniform, 86. I dressed for every game for 3 straight years with the fewest goals, 0, and I played right wing. So that's not good. It's actually a family record. I hold it with my brother, who also failed to score on the team, although, as he likes to point out, he played goalie. So, hey, we all got excuses, but there we are. So, worst team in school history, worst team in America, worst player in school history. There's your combination that you want. And they didn't want it. The vote was 4-2 against me from the search committee. The ones voting against me were the athletic director, Jane Bennett, old friend of mine, who was my 8th grade algebra teacher. She nonetheless voted for the new guy, the stranger. So did her secretary, so did a parent, and so did the incoming captain. So those are 4 votes you really don't want against you, but I had them. I had 2 for me, but the 2, that should have been it right there. Should have been the end. But the 2 for me, Steve Sheldon, a parent, and Rod Sorge, our star trainer, would not take no for an answer. They kept hammering the other 4 until finally 2 of them one of them changed their mind, Jane Bennett. So now it's 3-3, and the principal picks me only because pretty much I went to Huron, I think, was the deciding factor. But that meant the players and the parents were not pleased by my hiring. So now you got the worst team in America, the worst player in school history, and they don't want you. So it's a wonderful situation to walk into, of course. What do? You get help. And I urge all new leaders, whether you're old or young, makes no difference. New leaders make one very clear, obvious mistake early on, and that is they think they've got to be all powerful and all knowing, and that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Listening to your people is a sign of weakness. No. You need all the help you can get. When I hear a guy like that, that guy's in trouble. He's going to fail, and no one's going to catch him. So watch out for those guys. So I got all the help I could. Chapter 4 is called Make Sure You're the Dumbest Guy in the Room, and I was. My staff was overly qualified, guys who played at Michigan, played in Sweden, some of the best players in the city. So I exceeded my expectations. I was by far the dumbest guy in that room. Didn't matter. I was the head coach. And as long as you guys understand that, I want your opinions, your honest opinions, and we'll go from there. And I also got help from a guy named Al Clark, my mentor at Culver Academies in Indiana. Al Clark still holds the record for the most wins of any high school coach in America, 1,017. He's produced more than 100 Division I college players, 25 NHL draft picks, 9 NHL players, 6 Olympians. This guy is amazing. So I asked him, my first boss in this business, what do I do? And he said, the first thing you got to do is to make it special to play for Huron. And I said, well, we're already the worst team in America. That's pretty special. He says, no. Ignored my crack. He said, the easiest way to make it special is to make it hard. The easiest way to make it special is to make it hard. It seems paradoxical, and it's certainly the opposite advice that everyone else is telling me about millennials, that they're lazy and they're entitled and they're selfish and you can't push them. And these guys, most of all, because they're the worst team in America, pretty rough. So, but you think about it, it's true. All right, Navy SEALs pays $54,000, probably the hardest job in the world. They take 6%. All right, the wait list is incredibly long on the Navy SEALs. Peace Corps, same thing. All right, you need a college degree. They put you in the poorest parts of the world. They pay you peanuts, $100 a month or so, a few $100 a month, not much. And they take 1 out of 6 applicants. How can the Peace Corps and the Navy SEALs afford to be that picky? Because they don't apologize for the hard. They don't deny that it's hard. They celebrate it. And as the Peace Corps says, this is the hardest job you'll ever love. And that's what we're selling, basically. And what Al next said was that if these guys know that they had to do things that not everybody would be willing to do just to make your team, then with a little encouragement, they will enforce your culture themselves. And that is exactly what happened. So we got as John said, I sent out the letter to everybody saying the bar is this high off the bat. In that letter, I actually said, our goal is nothing less than a state title. That's crazy with the worst team in America, but I meant it. As John pointed out, I was that crazy. Our goal is nothing less than the state title. I said, it's not going to happen this year, but it will happen sooner than you think. And when it does happen, the team that wins it will invite you back to give you a standing ovation. And that damn near happened also, by the way. So anyway, we're on the track in the weight room 1 week after school gets out, 3 days a week, every week for 4 straight months. That's longer than our season itself. So we put a season in of hard work before a season even started. These are voluntary workouts. State law mandates I cannot make you come. All right, so it's entirely voluntary, and not one player quit. And that tells you a lot about this generation and Generation Z now. Everyone's complaining about them. You got it wrong. These guys were promised nothing but hard work. Every single guy showed up, every workout. They kept showing up all fall. And after a while, they started inviting their friends over who played basketball and football and other sports. So they're proud of it. And those guys got smoked by those guys because our guys would never, ever take a backseat to the new guys from basketball and football after all the hard work they put in. And I knew it was sinking in, just like Al Clark said. When it's a late August workout, it rains that morning, sun comes out that afternoon, classic Michigan summer. It's so hot and so humid. The steam is coming off the track, so much steam that you couldn't make out the goalposts at the end of the field. I said, gentlemen, look at the goalposts. Can you see them? I said, no, we can't. I said, that's right. It's the hottest hour of the hottest day of the year. And we're lucky to be here at this moment. It's not on a Tuesday or Thursday. It's right here Wednesday, 12:30, to find out what we've got. We're not going to cry about it. We're not going to whine about it. We're going to brag about how hot it is and set every record we've got on this track. Who's with me? And of course, all the guys were with me at that point. Pretty cool. Except a new guy, a freshman, who is new to our workouts. He grumbles something. And that's when Mike Henry, our captain, turns to him with just the right amount of irony, but he meant it for the most part, and said, hey, you play for Huron, and it's harder over here. And once I heard that, I thought, man, that's exactly what we're trying to get. Booyah. And that goes on our wall in our locker room. So that was an awesome thing to say, and it's from them. It carries more power. Al Clark was right. So the season starts, and incredibly, in our first week of the season, we win 3 games. That is as many games as we won the previous 2 seasons combined, for crying out loud. Pretty amazing. As my dad said, it's the title of chapter 1. When you're on the floor, you can't fall out of bed. And that's true. If you're starting at dead last, anything is better. But then we've got to play almighty Trenton in our 4th game. And Trenton, of course, has won 14 state titles. USA Today called them the greatest team in America. And they got a banner about that. They got 14 state title banners. So many banners that I told my players when I got there, don't look up, because all it's going to do is freak you out. And of course, that never worked. They all looked up, and guess what? They freaked out, and Trenton crushed us 13-2. And I'll remind you, this is not high school football. This is hockey, of course. So those come in increments of 1. So each time I count a number, 1, puck in the back of your net, they celebrate, band plays. 2, puck in the back of your net, they celebrate, band plays. 3, puck in the back of your net, they celebrate, the band plays. You can imagine how tedious it would be to count 10 more of those while you're actually there. I knew their damn fight song by the end of the night. It was that brutal. So, but that's life. That's how it goes. We get in the locker room, and the guys are throwing their sticks and throwing their gloves and pretty upset, saying it's worse than last year. We never lost this badly last year. And said, hey, stop. And I said, I saw what you saw. We got our butts handed to us on a silver platter. That's how good those guys are. We got a lot of work to do. That's fine. We'll do the work. I said, but that doesn't matter to me. What does matter are our values, which we've been shouting back and forth for 4.5 months at that point to each other, at all our workouts, all our practices, on everything we ever did. The same thing John mentioned in our first letter. What are the 2 values of Huron hockey? And at first they mumble them, work hard, support your teammates. I said, no. We started yelling them back and forth again. And I said, okay, did you do it? Did you actually work hard and support your teammates the entire night? They think about it and they thought, actually we did. We didn't take a single shift off, down 13-2 in the last few minutes. We didn't slack off then. We didn't coast the bench. We supported our goalie. We didn't point fingers at the forwards. We were positive the entire night. I said, that's right. You did both those things incredibly well all night long. When we're getting crushed 13-2, it will never be harder to do those 2 things than it was tonight. And you guys did them. This was heroic. And I want you guys to leave this place keeping your head high. This was great. And let me remind you, we play those bastards again in 2 months, and it ain't going to be 13-2. Don't worry. So they walked out with their heads held high. This is a crucial lesson, though, and that is that when you focus on behaviors and not results, and that's one of the chapters, by the way, be patient with results, be impatient with behaviors. So behaviors I cared about a great deal. Results, I'll worry about those. The record, the score, and all that, don't you worry about that. I worry about that. All right? So you worry about the 2 values, work hard, support your teammates. Once you do that, then you can define yourself. We define it every day we were together. How good was that day? Depending on those 2 rules, and that's all. And that's a wonderful, liberating thing to do. So that carried us through. We won 7 games that year, the most improved team in school history. The second year, we have set up what I call layers of leadership. This is crucial for any workplace, I believe. If it's a leader versus their people, you're going to lose that battle. You have more people than you, so you're not going to win. So it's got to be layers of leadership. On our team, that was head coach, assistant coaches who were great, as I said, the captains, also great, seniors, then juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. We expected nothing from those guys. They're young, they're knuckleheads, they're new to the program. I'm not expecting much. But on our team, we had a joke about leading by example. It's clearly very important to lead by example, but that for us was only the starting point, really. And our joke was, what's the name of those who lead by example? And the answer is sophomores. So all that means is you can do your job and you know your job, and that's it. That's why you get a paycheck, a parking spot. That's why you have a job. So we got a jersey and a stall in my locker room. That's all that means. So your junior year, I want you to know your job, do your job, and know everyone else's job too. And by your senior year, I want you to know your job, do your job, know everyone else's job too, and help them do their jobs better. And now your team is leading itself. Let them lead. John Cooper was coaching high school hockey in Lansing, at Lansing Catholic Central. When I started at Huron, he has since become the Tampa Bay Lightning head coach. He has won 2 Stanley Cups in a row and might win a 3rd this year. So our career paths diverge a little bit, I guess. But at any rate, he had a great line. He said, bad teams, nobody leads. Good teams, leaders lead. Great teams, everybody leads. And that's what I wanted, and that's what we had. So that was pretty cool right there. Another philosophy, chapter 6, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, of course. Chapter 6 is let them surprise you. And what that means is this. Nate Reichwedge, it's the best example I can think of. You treat them all equally, you treat them all fairly, and you see who rises. Don't play favorites. So Nate, his first year working out with us as a sophomore, was our 5th string goalie, and most teams have 3 goalies. And we liked Nate so much, he came to all the workouts, and one of our 2 senior goalies broke his ankle. So, okay, the 4th and 5th goalie will alternate practices because I want to keep Nate involved. So Nate stayed on the team his first year. Second year, he's a 3rd string goalie because 2 seniors graduated, but he's still a distant 3rd. But mid-season, we're 6-5, and that's pretty good for us, but we should be 10-1. Our goaltending was very good all summer long. We had the Summer League champs. But that fall, they're at each other's throats, so they weren't getting along. They're bringing each other down. It was getting on me, so I got tired of that. So I thought, you know what? Screw it. I'm putting Nate in. And Nate, in the game right before winter break, so you got 3 weeks to think about this game afterwards, against Grosse Pointe South, the number 7 team in the state. We've never beaten them in 20 years of league play, and the average score is about 7-1 with those guys. So it's pretty brutal on that front too. And what happens? Nate Reichwich walls them out of nowhere, and Huron wins 5-3, first time ever. And their coach was very gracious in the Ann Arbor News afterwards. He said, I see a highly disciplined team out there and a bunch of players who believe in their coach's system. And he gave me way too much credit because I was fully expecting to get blown out that night to teach everyone a lesson. And instead, I got lucky as hell because Nate Reichwich played the game of his life. But he looked great doing it. He wasn't getting lucky. He all of a sudden looked like a starting goalie. And that night on, he was my starting goalie. So that was it. For the next year and a half, Nate Reichwich was a starting goalie. That earned him the Most Improved Player award on our team, earned him a big feature in the Ann Arbor News, and earned him the nickname from his teammates, Darth Nader. That's pretty cool too. So that's the story there about let them surprise you. The lesson there is you water all the plants. I was on a podcast recently with Scotty McConnell, one of our great players, wonderful guy. He scored his first goal with 3 seconds left in his high school career. That was pretty cool. So he's not our best player, third or fourth line guy, but a hard worker. Everyone loved him. And he said, I paid as much attention to him lifting weights as our star, Chris Fragner, ended up playing for Michigan. So I treated them all equally. They're all important. And from there, you water all the plants and you see who grows and when. And don't give yourself too much credit. You have no idea who's going to succeed and when. So you water all the plants. That also applies to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, don't play favorites. Get out of the prediction business. Get into the coaching business. Water them all and see who rises. Give them all a chance. And they surprised me again and again and again. It was awesome. So we finished that year at 16-8-2, and we got to play who? Trenton in the regional finals. So this is going to be hard. They are again number 1. They're about to win another state title, it turns out. We got to play them in their place. So what do? I call the great Herb Brooks, the mastermind behind the Miracle on Ice. And we're friends at that point from articles, and we're thinking about doing a book together. I said, Herb, I got to call you up today, not about articles, not about a book, but about our game tomorrow night against Trenton. He knew about Trenton, of course, even from Minnesota. And I said, basically, they're the Soviets. We're the Americans. What do we do? He says, Johnny, with this flat Minnesota accent, Johnny, just tell him this. Above all, you got to believe. And that was an awesome thing to say. He said, if you believe, anything is possible. If you don't believe, nothing is possible. So I said, that's probably true. So I told my players that night. They got all jacked up knowing that Herb Brooks is watching them. And I said, I'm not worried about you guys. I'm worried about them, Trenton, because I know how hard you've worked. I know how close you guys are. You support each other all the time. They know nothing about that. Who goes from 0 wins to 16 in 2 seasons? Nobody but you. You're it. You're a runaway freight train, and those guys are in your way. So that's their problem. I'm worried about them getting crushed because they don't see it coming, and I do. And with that pregame speech, I turned to my captains and said, Captains, seniors, your room. And I walk out, and they give the final talk to their teammates without me in the room. And you can hear the fire coming out through that door. They're on fire. They're ready to go. They hop out there. We played a great game. We outshot them 30-27. We went ahead 1-0. And then we tied them 2-2. Third period, we're down 3-2 in the last 2 minutes. Pull the goalie. Got a shooting range at their end of the ice. We had a pipe. We had a crossbar. The horn blows, and we lose 3-2. It's obviously heartbreaking. But after that game, their fans in a packed house stood up and gave my guys, my players, a standing ovation. That was pretty cool. And they earned it too. That's not the same team they had beaten 13-2 just 16 months earlier. So that was pretty neat. In the handshaking line afterwards, their captain sees the C on our captain's jersey, Chris Kunkel, pulls him close and says, you guys should have won that game. A class act from a class team. So after that game, we go in the locker room and I say, hey, what are the first 2 rules of Huron hockey? They didn't have to answer. We just laughed. That's how far we'd come based on those 2 things. I said, gentlemen, those are our values. I'm proud of you. I love you. You walk out of here with your head held high. You just scared the hell out of the state's best team. And they did. So that was one of our best games. Third year, we got a roll. We got a 14-game unbeaten streak. We're number 4 in the state. We finally stub our toe versus Trenton. We lose by a goal or 2 to them. We're now at their level. We lose to Pioneer. We'd beaten them already once that year, Ann Arbor Pioneer. We lost to them the second time. So I get paranoid as a head coach. What do you do when you get paranoid? Whenever we had a problem, the answer is always the same: trust them, let the rope out more and more and more, and make them lead their own team. So I called up our captain, who was then Chris Fragner, our star, Mr. Hockey runner-up. I said, Captain, tomorrow night, you seniors are going to coach the entire game. And he said, what does that mean? I said, you'll find out. They got to the rink. They found the dry erase board with the lineup on it was erased. The score sheet had nothing filled in. I gave the seniors pen and a marker for the board and say, pick the 20 guys who are dressing, pick the 5 guys who are starting. During the game, you'll pick when we change lines, which in hockey happens on the fly during play. Pick the power play and the penalty kill as those arise. Talk to the team, not me, between periods. And after the game, you, not me, will talk to the Ann Arbor News. Hope you win. And that's pretty cool. And they did it. They beat a very good team that's in our league now, 6-0. And the cool part was not the 6 goals. The cool part was the 0 goals against. So that means they felt accountable to each other. They felt very strong about this. They felt unified. And that was one of the best games we ever had. And I did not coach a lick. So the title is Let Them Lead for a Reason. And there you go. And when we get to the finals, the regional finals, we're number 4. We got to beat a 9th-ranked team, 7th-ranked team, 3rd-ranked team, and 1st-ranked team just to get to the Final 4. We have 2 more ranked teams. Nobody could have ever had a harder draw than this one. We win the first game pretty handily. Second game, we're out shooting them 2-1, but we lose in overtime 4-3. And it's heartbreaking. And the guys are crying in the locker room afterwards. It was pretty bad. I told them I loved them. I respect them. Did all I could ask for and then some. You know, I'm sad it worked out this way, but that's life sometimes. And then nobody moved a muscle. Nobody got undressed until the captain, Chris Fragner, started getting undressed 15 minutes later. That was not a rule on our team, but that's how the layers of leadership actually worked. They knew to defer to him, basically. So, and on his way to the shower, he turns and says the first words anybody spoke after me all night. He says, freshmen, I just want to thank you guys this year for filling the water bottles and doing the stats and picking the pucks up after practice and so on. You guys were great. And at one of the speeches earlier this fall, I got choked up just saying that because it shows you what a great team we had, that the first thing he's thinking about are the guys who were not even in uniform that night. That's a good team. That's a real family. And I love them for it. At the senior banquet 2 weeks later, nobody talked about our 14-game winning streak. Nobody talked about our best record in school history. We're number 53, by the way, in the nation by then. We'd passed 95% from dead last out of 1,000 to 53rd. We passed 95% in the nation. I don't think anybody's ever done that before or since. But they didn't talk about any of those things. They talked about being in the locker room, how good that felt, how safe they felt, what a good bunch of guys, and the values that we stood for, which only proves all along it was never about the hockey. The values will outlive your victories, and your principles will outlast your profits if you have principles. So don't tell me that this generation is lazy and soft and selfish. All right, if that's the case, we're doing a poor job leading them. If you give them a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and you let them lead, they will exceed all your expectations, and they certainly exceeded mine. So that's my message. Now we got plenty of time for Q&A. Right on time there, John. What do we got?
Yeah. Well, I'll let. There's a couple questions in the Q&A now, but I'll ask a few of my own first to give folks time to fill in the Q&A box with more questions. So please, if you have questions and you're watching us, don't hesitate to submit those now. We'll get to them here in a second. But I just have a couple questions to get us started, and then we'll turn it over to those audience questions.
Can I see the screen, by the way, of everybody?
We can't do that in a webinar unless we admit them all as panelists, which we can't unfortunately do. But my first question is, I'm just curious about the origin of the book as this leadership book with these, with these takeaways and lessons and sort of projected facing this way as that kind of book, because I think there's like a kernel in here that could just have been like a memoir or like, your recounting of those seasons as its own book. So I'm wondering, was it apparent to you right off the bat, this is going to be a book about applying the lessons from this season in a way to a reader, to leaders, to people in business, to people in any kind of leadership position? Or did you maybe just have this as a project that was going to be like, maybe I'll write about that time coaching someday, and it sort of evolved from there?
I always wanted to write about this. One of my assistant coaches, Pete Ure, who's a great assistant coach, he said, if you don't write this book someday, I'll kill you. So he was there. He saw it for himself. He's an NBA guy and a great hockey player. So people who are close to it knew that we had a pretty amazing story. The question is how to tell it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did not try to tell it when I finished coaching because I was too close to it. Also, I didn't know how to tell it because if you try to do it like Friday Night Lights, the problem is I didn't show up there as a journalist and everyone knows I'm a journalist.
Right.
I was there as their coach. And that's a different relationship, obviously, very different. I learned all their confidences. They had all mine. You can't be their coach and then say at the end of it, oh, ha, ha, I'm a journalist, surprise. It's a bait and switch. It's not fair. So how do you tell this story? But I don't want to be dishonest. I don't want to make stuff up or, make it sunnier than it was or whatever else. And then I gave a TED Talk in 2014, which you can see on my website. And I always forget to mention this. LetThemLeadByBacon.com is the website. The TED Talk is on there. And so is the podcast. The podcast is, last I checked, in the top 50 in business management nationwide. So that's pretty cool. We got Red Berenson on there and a lot of folks that you'll recognize on there. Carol Hutchins, other folks like that, Jim Hackett, Ari Weinswig from Zingerman's. So anyway, he saw that and he said, this is a business book, a leadership book. He'd done my first bestseller, and that was Bo's Lasting Lessons. He'd since gone on to write, or edit, From the Gut, the Jack Welch blockbuster bestseller, the GE CEO. Rick has now done, I think, about 60 New York Times bestselling leadership books. So he said, this is a leadership book. Once we saw it through that prism, we actually got the idea. Because that way I could, pluck what we needed out of it without having to tell the whole truth and misleading the readers. I could protect their privacy and still not be dishonest with the readers, because it's not the purpose of a leadership book to tell you everything, to tell you the stuff that applies to other people's leadership situations. So once we had that idea, then the thing took off. It all made sense. Also, what we did, because my players have gone on to be leaders themselves, which is pretty cool. Scooter McConnell is now the lawyer in the Department of Homeland Security. Pete Herring is a vice president for his engineering firm. Mike Henry, my first captain, now runs the USA Hockey Arena in Plymouth, as well as about 30 or 40 teams, I think, and done a very good job in leadership there. And the list goes on and on like this. An amazing set of leaders we have. I asked them, what do you remember? What are your insights? What are your stories? And they sent me back 150 pages, John. So at that point, you bake that in. That's unheard of for a leadership book, to actually hear from the people who you're trying to lead. And also my mistakes are also in here. So it's not the usual know-it-all leadership book. It's got a different feel to it, I think. But that was great. So I could not have gotten that if we did the book in 2004. So Rick Wolf was the guy who figured out how to crack this code. And at that point, once we started writing, it all came together pretty well. And the book functions kind of on two levels. And the reviews so far from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, from the Toronto Globe and Mail, from Sporting News, other places like that, NPR really, they say the same thing, which is it's two books in one. It's leadership lessons on the one hand with bullet points at the end of each chapter. There's also this pretty amazing story of what these high school guys could do. And as the NPR editor said, Edith Chapin, that's the heart of the story. It's these amazing young men. And that's why, by the way, we are working on a screenplay with Jim Bernstein, who the screenwriter for D3 Mighty Ducks. And we got a pretty good chance of selling it, I think. We'll see. But because this book lends itself to it. So yeah, I tried to write it.
That you lead into one of my other questions, because I noticed that you mentioned in the author's note that you sent the players, their passages to verify you remember things correctly, and you got all 150 pages back. I was really curious to know, like, what was the most surprising, maybe not correction, but like, I don't know, reframing of something you were writing about that you got back, or maybe something that stood out as the most interesting feedback that you got from a former player.
I have not gotten that question before, so I'm rusty on it, but a few things pop into mind right away. One, for example, when about a month into my tenure, Mike Henry, the very charismatic captain, he wasn't taking things as seriously as I wanted him to. And he was kind of joking through the stretching and, too cool to care kind of thing. And the reason is, in his defense, if you go 0, 22, and 3, and you don't care, it's kind of ironic and kind of cool. If you do care, it's embarrassing, it's horrible. So they were all kind of holding back and actually investing themselves, actually caring. And Mike was kind of at the front of that. So I said, look, man, you don't realize they're following you. And they're not following me, they're following you. And I need you going this direction. And if you go this direction, they will follow you, Mike. You're a better leader than I am. They like you more than they like me. I'm sure of it. And I thought at the time it was kind of a trip to the woodshed, me wagging my finger. And Mike said he didn't take it that way at all. He took it that this is just two guys sitting down figuring out what to do with this team. It was a wake up call that you have more on the ball than you think, and I need you to use it. So that was a happy thing there to learn that. I would say the example I gave you, Chris Kunkel on the handshaking line.
Right.
When the other captain says, you guys should have won this game. I had never heard that till the last year. I wish I'd heard it before because I've given speeches on this. A little anecdote. I also didn't realize, well, first, one thing that was obvious that Mike Lappridge came, and every guy who sent me stuff, which is half the team, about 30 guys, every guy who sent me stuff all mentioned Mike Lappridge, our amazing assistant coach, and the book is dedicated to him. So that was not too surprising. We're verifying Microsoft Outlook right now, so that's why it's that. But anyway, what also mattered to them more than I ever thought was the fact that Mike Lappridge and I, the assistant coach, we did all the workouts with them on the track, in the weight room, on the ice. If they skated laps, we skated laps. They went down and back. So I was 35. I was in pretty good shape at the time. I didn't think about it, but that came up every time as well. And that tells us a pretty obvious thing. Leading by example is important. It's not all you have to do. If you don't do that, you're a hypocrite and they're not going to follow you and they shouldn't follow you. So I learned a lot from their comments.
Yeah. You mentioned
they were verifying Microsoft PowerPoint. I don't know why any of this is going on.
It's all right. Sorry. You mentioned there's reunions with the team as well. And you know, in answer to my first question, you mentioned that the germ of the idea came much later. This book was always sort of in mind, but packaging it as leadership book came later. But I'm wondering if in those reunions, you know, or when you were composing the book, once the idea for a leadership book came about, you had already seen them apply these same lessons in their careers, and you could sort of look back at those reunions and keeping in touch with them to see, you know, where those two rules paid dividends down the line for those players.
Exactly right. And this is where, when Rick planted the seed that this I should write the book, we had a barbecue that summer as well. You see the guys come back and see them talk about, they can still recite the values, the mantras we used for, you know, even how to break the puck out. Butt on boards, skates on hash marks, and stick on ice. And they can all still say this stuff 15 years later. It doesn't help them on their jobs, I don't think, anymore. But I was struck by how much it all absorbed. Mike Henry uses the same thing for his 50-person staff at USA Hockey Arena. He says, you know, gotta work hard, support your teammates, and have fun. He adds one. Good for him. They passed it down. Once I saw that, then I started believing that Rick was right. This is applicable stuff. It's not about high school hockey. It's a much broader lesson. And they've applied it to engineering, to Homeland Security. Alan Sheldon is in charge of residential cafeterias at Michigan dining halls. They use this stuff. And that's when you realize, okay, this stuff is valuable outside of our team.
We'll go to some audience questions now. Joe writes, in chapter 8, you tell the story of Ross Gimble, who you almost cut from the team and was a bit of a class clown, certainly not a leader, but you challenged him throughout his career with Huron, and he went on to be captain of his college team at Tufts and a leader in business. What did you see in Ross that made you believe in his potential?
Great question. The guy asking that question, by the way, Joe Batista, is one of the greatest coaches I've ever encountered. He and I were assistant coaches at Culver Academies under Al Clark. Joe went on to win 6 national titles at the club level for Penn State, turned it into a varsity program, raised $104 million for a new rink. Yeah. Now they're varsity and beating Michigan more than they should, more than I'd like, certainly. So that's all Joe Batista, and a great leader with a great book, Pragmatic Passion. But anyway, what I saw in Ross was, he had talent. I knew that. But it sounds weird to say, I admired his stubbornness. I figured that energy, that stubbornness that I would occasionally butt heads with, and I'd heard other coaches had as well. If that could be rechanneled, we got something here. We just got to redirect his energy. He's got the energy. What you don't want is a marshmallow camper, as we used to call him when I was a counselor. The guy with no energy just fills a canoe. It's like, okay, this guy might be going the wrong direction, but he's going there fast. And so if we can just turn that around, use that power, we'll be okay. As one of my old coaches said, I'd rather say whoa than giddy up. And with Ross, I had to say whoa in a couple directions, but I liked the energy. And the fact that the guys in the team, by and large, liked him and respected him, even in his sophomore year. By his junior year, they all liked him and respected him. By his senior year, even though he wasn't a captain, he was a leader. What impressed me the most when he went to Tufts University, of course, in Boston, is that he was the MVP of the team his last 2 years. Didn't surprise me. He's a very skilled player. Probably could have played Division I. What impressed me is his teammates voted him captain of a good team. And now he's, by the way, a hotshot at Equinox gyms, which dominate the East Coast. He's in charge of facilities for, I think, about 30 or 40 Equinox gyms, New York, Boston, you name it. And now the CEO for that company is Scott DeRue, the former dean of Michigan's Business School, who's now working with Ross Gimble. So Ross is one of those guys who's become a great, great leader and used a lot of this stuff on the job. So the answer to the question, surprisingly, is Ross's stubbornness made me think that there's something there that we can use.
Thank you. Mark writes, and we talked a little bit about the origins of the book, but Mark wants to know, at what point did you know you were going to write a book? When you applied for the coaching job during the first season or sometime later? And as a follow-up, if the team had been terrible, was it still going to be a book?
Mark, by the way, I'm going to embarrass all my friends here today, but Mark is a bona fide big-time writer. I met him covering the Olympics, I think, in Nagano in '98. That was one of his just many iterations of his amazing journalism career. I think he's got a great book on him now about the Carnegie Libraries, which may sound crazy, but read his dispatches on Facebook and you'll know what I'm talking about. They're phenomenal. That is a journalist question right there and a good one. I did not think about writing about this when I applied for the job. I just wanted to do it. And not during the first season, because with all the drama we had and all that, what's our story there wasn't clear. By the end of my second year, you just started realizing this is a hell of a story. And I did keep a journal throughout the whole thing, which helped quite a bit when I got down to it. In the book, I say, I've got actual verbatim quotes of a lot of people, including me, throughout the book that I would never have had were it not for that journal. But I keep a journal a lot. I keep one of my kid right now. I don't plan on writing a book, but I do that a lot. I'm a writer. It was after the second season, the third season, that's when I realized we had got something, but I couldn't figure out how to tell it, as I said earlier, until Rick Wolf taught me how. The follow-up, if the team had been terrible, was it still going to be a book? The team was terrible. And we had a 10-game losing streak our first year, even though we won 7 games that year. That's how it went. There might still be a book, but I don't know how you'd tell it and who would buy it. There wouldn't be any leadership lessons in there, I don't think. So it'd be a hockey story only. It might be funny, but then how do you tell that story without violating their trust and their confidence? That's harder. So my guess is there probably wouldn't be. As it was, it took me 17 years to get a book out after I quit. So I could not call this a fast process. But I'll tell you what it would have been if we had kept on failing like that and 0 wins the next year and so on. It would have been a book. But Mark, it would be one hell of a screenplay. Bad News Bears, baby. We got it going.
Well, I do think that the lessons, one of the real things that's so striking about what you told the team was just that win or lose, following those rules was more important, right? So it seemed inevitable that success would be born out of working hard and supporting one another. But I feel like there might still be a story there about how, perhaps all those players would have gone on to all the success that they had otherwise, regardless of winning a lot of games was nice. And it seems like it was going to be inevitable. But I think that's kind of the interesting lesson is that all that stuff flows from that stuff, but there's still those hardships regardless. So
no question. And look, I mean, the cliche is true. We learn more from losing than from winning. And what sports teaches you is not how to win and how to compete. It teaches you how to lose and not give up. Yeah. Lose and not blame your teammates, not blame the refs, not make excuses. Lose and not get discouraged and not give up on yourself. How do you lose and keep going? And those guys are tough. And I know certain corporations like Stryker, for whom I've given speeches, they love hiring military guys. They love hiring athletes because those guys can take criticism, can take a hit and keep coming back. And that emotional resilience, I think, is very valuable for anybody, as corny as it may sound.
Yeah. Sheldon writes, this is touched on a little bit in the book, but I think it might be an interesting story to talk about. How did you work up the courage to take on a leadership position you probably weren't qualified for. I know that you mentioned in the book that that there was some pushback about you becoming the coach at Huron High.
Oh yeah, there was. The parents were pissed. And one of them, who's now a great friend of mine, Robin Kunkel, gave me the quote for the book. She's driving past Huron High. She said she remembers vividly driving past Huron High. It's like, why the hell did we have to get this loser when we could have gotten somebody good? He's just a former assistant coach, no experience as a head coach, etc. And Sheldon is my buddy, by the way, from Florida. If I have the right Sheldon Robertson, give me an indication on your keyboard there if I got you right. But that's my man, and he's a great guy and a great leader himself of that U of M club down there. I had confidence that I probably didn't deserve. Is what it boils down to. I had coached baseball in Ann Arbor at the junior high school level and the JV level at Culver Academy. Has been head coach, and that team went from 0-8 to 3-5 to 12-2, and we got to the quarterfinals, I think, of the state playoffs. So kind of a similar story, different sport, different age, but I was dumb enough to think that I had a shot at this. I had great support, Herb Brooks and Al Clark and Bo Schembechler and Red Berenson, to name a few. Joe Batista, my buddy there. But I'd also read and written enough about leaders and about the situations to know that life is short. Why not give this a shot? Why not find out what I have? I mean, I knew I could fail, and I had a great fear of failure, and I knew that was entirely possible. And a few times we got really close. A 10-game losing streak gets pretty close, I think. But I had this sense, and I still have this sense, why not take a chance? And life is short. Find out what you got. So it's less being certain I could do it than thinking that I'd be mad at myself if I didn't try. That's what it boiled down to.
Elizabeth wants to know, if the screenplay is picked up, who would you want to play you in the movie?
Somebody younger and better looking. How about that? So yes, I'm 57 years old now. Thank you, Elizabeth. Friend on Facebook and so on. It would not be even what's the guy's name? Ben Affleck's buddy. What's his name?
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, thank you. No, Matt Damon's too old for this thing now. It's got to be some 35-year-old guy. When Bernstein talks about Hollywood, he says, don't even bother saying that so-and-so is good looking. The ugliest people in your screenplay will be better looking than all of us. So don't worry about that. So anyway, that was pretty cool. So I don't know who's going to play me if that comes down to it. I probably won't get a whole lot to say. All I want is some bit part in there, the way Hitchcock used to do, either some referee that I was yelling at, or maybe an angry parent or something like that could be good. So give me that small role, I'll take it.
That'd be great. And there's another question for Sheldon that I forgot here at the top. How much of your coaching philosophy was taken from Bo?
A lot. And that is the right Sheldon Robertson. I don't know that many Sheldon Robertsons. So Sheldon, good to see you again, my friend. It's a funny situation. I'd known Bo from 96 on. But I started, so for 3 or 4 years at the Detroit News, we did a lot of stories together and so on. He was very good to me. We talked about once a month or so. But we didn't start his book till 2005. And this is a common misconception. I coached from 2000 to 2004 before I wrote the Bo book. People think I wrote the Bo book and then coached, and of course got all these lessons. No, I didn't. I coached first and then got the lessons from Bo afterwards. I knew some of them from our conversations and I applied them. And I went to Bo with some questions occasionally. I went to Red Berenson with questions. Why not ask the experts? So they were great on how to handle personnel and difficulties and so on. Al Clark had a great line when I was complaining about somebody doing something stupid. He says, well, John, if all the players were perfect, our work wouldn't count for much now, would it? And I said, that's pretty good. So don't complain about these issues. That's why you get paid. And that's part of the book. I got that in the book, actually, what Al said. It's brilliant. So you'll see a lot of Bo's fingerprints throughout this book, how he did goal setting, for example. And Bo is underestimated in this regard. Everyone thinks he's a dictator and an authoritarian figure. And yeah, in some ways he was. But he had layers of leadership. Seniors sat in first class. The coaches sat in the back by the bathrooms on their flights. He did a lot of this stuff, and I got it from him. And he always said, you're only as good as your senior leadership. I believed that from the start. I wasn't quite entirely sure why at first, but it very quickly became obvious that without the seniors, we're all screwed. The seniors run this team. And I stole a lot of that from Bo. It's a really good question. And second of all, when I did write the book with Bo Schembechler, it was a much better book because I had coached and he and I could talk about things that we both knew. And I could also fill in blanks for him after he passed away about how goal setting works and so on, things that I knew Bo believed in, but things that I'd experienced myself. So that was a great relationship, and I'm lucky to have it.
And I think we're about to wrap up. So I just have one more question for you.
Go Rats, Elizabeth. Yes.
Personally, is what if you're able to talk about it, what's the seventh book you and I will be collaborating on promoting through Literati in the hopefully not too distant future?
Good question. Not entirely sure yet, but turn this into a screenplay is the
Yeah.
goal. Halifax turning into a play for Purple Rose Theater
Oh, wow.
that should run in the fall if all goes well. So working on those two things. The podcast is taking a lot of time as well as promoting the book. So I don't know is the question. I thought, and I wrote this in overtime. I actually wrote an End Zone. It's probably my last Michigan football book, and I thought it was. And then I realized in overtime I had more to say. But that was kind of all I had to say about college football in book form anyway. But damn it, if this team wins at all.
I guess that's the question on everybody's minds.
I'd be foolish not to look at that, I think. But in the meantime, on Tuesday, a week from today at 1:20 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be on Good Morning America 3 in the afternoon. So check that one out. A solid 3 minutes, so don't sneeze. That's a long time for that show, actually. So check that one out. On that one, they said, this is the real Ted Lasso. And that's kind of funny, but I'll take it. So
that's great.
We're not sure yet. Got a few other projects, John. So, but I'm confident of this, John. We will be doing a book together again.
Yeah, I know that's true. And before we go, you got any Orange Bowl predictions you want to share with all of us?
I haven't thought about it yet enough, and I will actually break down some film as best I can, some other stuff. I think Michigan's got a real shot, and I would not have said that a month ago.
Yeah.
Georgia was undefeated and steamrolling teams, and Michigan has already lost to Michigan State and so on. The way they manhandled Iowa, yes, and Iowa's got a great defense, but the way they manhandled Ohio State got my attention. Yeah. And that score could have been a lot worse than it was.
Yeah.
Michigan beat them by 15 without a single turnover, without causing one. So that could have been a whole different story there. I think Georgia lines up similarly to Ohio State, and I think as long as Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, can get their former walk-on quarterback to the backfield, then the game is going to be different. So I think Michigan's going to win that one. Actually, I would not pick Michigan against Alabama right now.
Right.
They still got to be a touchdown or two underdogs. They're already a 7-point underdog or so against Georgia, but does that matter anymore? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's right. It's house money to me anyway. So
all gravy, baby, all gravy. Banner goes up next year.
That's right. All right. Well, that's all the time we have tonight on At Home with Literati. John Bacon, it's always great to have you through our store, even though we can only do so virtually at the moment, but we appreciate it. The book is Let Them Lead. There's signed copies in the store that I'm not physically in, but it's pictured behind me. You can pick yours up there. John, I look forward to book 7, not your book 7, but book 7 with us.
That's right.
And we'll talk to you soon. So take care, everybody.
Sure. It's Let Them Lead by bacon.com. Thanks, guys.
Good night, all.